Big rental changes are coming to Ontario, and some of these updates could directly impact landlords, tenants, investors, or even future buyers. If you own rental property, if you're thinking about becoming a landlord, or even if you currently rent in Ontario, this is a video you're going to want to stay for, because today we're breaking down the actual dates these changes are taking effect, what the changes are, and how they may affect real estate decision making moving forward. And one thing I'm noticing right now is that many people have heard bits and pieces online, but they haven't actually seen the timelines or the wording attached to the changes. So today we're going through them together in a simple way. Hi everyone, I'm Barbara Scarlett. I'm a local real estate broker here in Fort Erie and Niagara. I'd like to point out here and now that when dealing with landlord and tenant board issues, whether you have a real estate agent or not, I strongly recommend consulting a paralegal if you're facing any challenges with regards to landlord and tenancy policies. I spend a lot of time studying market trends, housing changes, and updates that impact homeowners, landlords, and tenants, because many of these policy changes eventually affect real estate decisions and market movement overall. And recently, Ontario announced commencement dates for several Residential Tenancies Act amendments connected to Bill 60 and Bill 97. So let's break down what's changing and when. Section 1, July 1st, 2026 changes. The first group of changes comes into effect July 1st, 2026. One of the biggest updates involves air conditioning. Under the new rules, tenants will be explicitly permitted to install portable or window air conditioning units if landlords do not provide air conditioning, provided the installation is done safely and securely. Now, this is important because previously, this sometimes created disputes between landlords and tenants depending on the lease and the wording and the building concerns. Another key change related to it is the electricity costs. If landlords pay for the electricity under the tenancy agreement, the landlord may now be able to change a seasonal rent increase tied to the increase in electricity usage subject to certain rules. We're also seeing a change involving rent arrears agreements. Starting July 1st, landlords and tenants will be required to use an approved landlord and tenant board form for rent arrears payment agreements. And another major update, maximum fines under the Residential Tenancies Act are increasing significantly. For individuals, fines increase from $50,000 to $100,000. For corporations, fines increase from $250,000 to $500,000. So clearly, Ontario is also strengthening enforcement around compliance. And by the way, if you're finding these updates helpful, I'll be putting together a simple guide or summary sheet that you can reference later, because there are a lot of dates and details connected to the changes. You can also check the description for more information, and feel free to subscribe because I regularly break down Ontario's housing updates, Fort Erie market trends, and the real estate changes that affect both homeowners and investors. Now let's get into the next section of changes, because these are the ones that I think the landlords are going to be paying attention to. Section 2, September 21st, 2026. The next round of changes come into effect September 1st, 2026, and one major change involves personal use notices. Under the new rules, landlords who provide tenants with at least 120 days notice to end the tenancy for personal use will no longer be required to compensate the tenant or offer another acceptable rental unit. That's a significant shift, because currently compensation requirements are often part of these notices. There are also new renovation related requirements. Landlords ending a tenancy due to repairs or renovations will now be required to provide written notification about estimated completion dates, changes to completion dates, and final occupancy readiness dates. In addition, tenants must be given at least 60 days to reoccupy the unit after renovations are completed. And if landlords fail to provide these notices or fail to honor the tenant's first right of refusal, tenants may apply to the landlord and tenant board for remedies. Another important detail, the timeline for tenants to file these applications is being extended. Tenants may have up to 2 years from vacating the property or 6 months after renovations are completed depending on the situation. And finally, Ontario is shortening the notice period for evictions due to non-payment of rent from 14 to 7 days for fixed term and month-to-month tenancies. Now, one thing I think is important to understand is that these changes are happening during a market where investors, landlords, and tenants are already navigating rising costs, financing pressures, affordability concerns, and shifting market conditions. And anytime legislation changes, it can influence investor behaviors, rental supply, and overall confidence in the market. Some landlords may view certain changes positively. Others may feel these are additional compliance requirements and responsibilities. But regardless of opinion, understanding the dates and the rules become very important because these changes are now moving from discussions into implementation. The memorandum from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing was dated April 27th, 2026, and according to the memorandum, additional in effect dates for the remaining changes under Bill 97 and Bill 60 are still to be determined. So those are some of the major Ontario Residential Tenancy Act changes currently scheduled for July 1st and September 21st of 2026. If you're a landlord, tenant, or investor, and you're trying to understand how these changes may affect your situation, it's important to stay informed because policy changes often shape market behavior over time. And if you're thinking about buying, investing in property in Fort Erie or Niagara, or you're trying to understand how these changes fit into today's market, feel free to reach out. Also, if you're interested in understanding where Niagara and Fort Erie real estate market is heading next, you may want to check out my market update videos because I break down the inventory, pricing trends, negotiation opportunities, and what buyers and sellers are experiencing right now here in our market. Click on one of the videos on your screen and I'll see you over there.